the day. We can keep going all night.
There's door prizes.
Oh, man, really? We got to stop because of prizes?
Yeah, there's
Surprise! Where are the prizes?
Yeah, they're giving away raspberry pies.
Oh, man.
Oh, those are delicious.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, last talk of the day. Everybody can hear okay? I think the mic's working. I can hear the feedback of myself. So, come on, everybody, last talk of the day. Hello, Austin!
Hello. There we go.
Oh, come on now. Really? Pretzels have taken you down that much. Come on, deep breath. It's almost over. Another hour. We hope to entertain you at least.
All right. Yeah, all right. So let's, so we're going to keep this hopefully interesting for you here, but I'm going to kind of calm Michael down here a little bit. He kind of gets a little bit out of control, so I'm going to calm him down a little bit. I want to introduce us. So Michael Gough, myself, Ian Robertson, we both go out and find bad juju and stuff, and we basically kind of call ourselves, of course, as a result, the MILF Hunters. So, you know.
What were you thinking? Seriously, what were you thinking? Get the mind out of the gutters.
All right. Malware in live form. And so we go after, a little faster than the trigger finger there, I think. All right, we go after the bad actors, of course. That's what we're going after. And so some of our background here, which we think brings a unique perspective to what we're doing, is we both do forensics analysis. We go pretty deep on stuff. No pun intended. Malware hunters. We're blue teamers, defenders of the good. It's really easy to find vulnerabilities and stuff. It's much more difficult to find ways to prevent and defend your networks. And that's where we like to share this kind of information. We're both developers and we're also consultants. So we're wrapping this all up, and hopefully we can impart some information that'll help you all and be able to take back some actionable information.
And of course, we have unique and aha moments.
So let's start off with a typical malware investigation from an IT perspective. We've done several talks, we've surveyed audiences, and this is typically what we find. If a piece of malware is found on a system, usually the IT person will be alerted to it by their antivirus program. Sometimes it's drive-by download, sometimes it's a USB stick, something like that. And typically, they'll just perform another antivirus scan. And if it comes up clean, awesome, we're good. If it has another problem, then they'll initiate a scan.
Question, Ian. How many people in the room actually see this in practice in IT?
Okay, a lot more hands. Come on. This is
They're
pretty
recording.
common.
Raise the hand so they
It's
see a
common.
percentage.
We've all done this before. This is, depending upon the tools that we have at hand. I love this example here, just from the perspective of the wonderful guidance that Kaspersky gives you here. Of what's their recommendation? Ignore, do nothing. Yay! Okay. What's that?
Problem solved.
Problem solved. Absolutely. I've taken action. And you know what? Maybe I want to apply this great logic across everything else. So let me check the apply to all objects button too, just to simplify my life. Great. So antivirus sucks. We know that, okay? It hasn't been able to keep up with all the samples that are coming out, a lot of repeat stuff. But just small hash changes is all it requires to bypass it in a lot of cases. And with the things that Michael and I have analyzed, we've got a detection rate of about 3%. Of things that are actually malware we've analyzed, we're getting a hit rate of 3% when we throw it up against things like VirusTotal. So pretty low, and that's really common.
The reason for that, I think, even being as high as 3%, is because they phish us as well, and they know what AV you're using, so they're okay to give you a piece of fish or something not really stealthy in an email fish, and your AV will not catch it, but when we upload it to VT, we get some hits. It's probably the only reason it's at 3%.
Yeah. The other interesting thing, too, is when you're looking at what does get detected in antivirus, when you're looking at, say, VirusTotal, right? It's pretty common where you'll either get maybe 1 or 2 hits on something, or you'll get like almost everything hitting on something because they share the information that they have on the back end. So think about that the next time that you're looking at changing up your AV product or considering whether or not it's all that useful to you. So IT has a few options when they're dealing with this, right? You can either ignore the basic problem, maintain your status quo. Okay, I know we've got a problem. I know we can't find this stuff easily, but we don't know what else to do, so we're just going to keep going. We're going to ignore it. We're just going to not deal with it, and just, that's all we're doing. Or you can do a better job watching for odd activity and go into deeper investigations, looking at things like, doing a much better job looking at things with Splunk, or using BigFix in unique ways, or doing anything else, any kind of additional analysis, and drilling in and doing deeper investigations. Or you can wait until you're told that you have a breach, and then you can spend a whole lot of money on it. And most of those breaches you'll get notified of come from external third parties. What were the stats here? 94%?
94%'s been reported lately. That's amazing. That basically means we're not able to admit ourselves, or we don't know. Yes, David?
Oh, 1 in 3 different.
Why are 1 and 3 different?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a matter of time.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a matter of time.
This is a fallacy, right?
210-day average right here, third party.
Right. Because this is what a lot of folks think, right? A lot of IT shops think that. I'll just be there, it's okay. But the reality is, you will get breached. You will have something happen, and you will have to spend, once the right person finds out, you'll have to spend a lot of money on it. It really depends on who that third party is and how they bring that information to you. If it goes to the press, is generally or again, goes to the press, or it goes to some other source where you have to now legally take action and follow state breach notification law. That's when the money goes in, right? That's when it starts flowing.
Pay spin. I got to report it, damn it. Right. So typical forensics investigation, examine registry keys, right? So we're basically looking at Windows system. It's 90% what's in all of our environments. And we also look for newly dropped files. Obviously, this is kind of what you do on a daily basis, or the tools we'll do on a daily basis, Tripwire, for example. We look for new services running in processes. We can do that via looking at the logs and doing it Splunk. You can do it manually, whatever tools you use. You might use Zipton's product or NetIQ, or, well, you sat in front, you're going to get picked on. Come on, Ryan. And then once you look at all that stuff and the process is running, you're going to then start looking at what's suspicious to you, the short list of stuff. And then we're going to generally exclude signed files, and we're going to talk about that in a second. And of course, there's other forensic goodness, but this is kind of the not deep forensics. This is the first pass, the triage kind of forensics. We call it sniper forensics.
So with all of your tools and tricks that you use, at some point, you're looking at a system that you think is probably infected, and you're looking at a file, and you're asking yourself the question, is this file valid? Is this a good file? Is it a bad file? And so we put up a few examples here for you. So this is an NVIDIA user experience driver. It's got a lot of information on it. You can look at this and you can tell what this is supposed to be. You don't know if it's good or if it's bad, but you've got some information on it. You know what it is. This one here, you don't have a file description. It says the type of file application extension, okay. File version 1.0.0.0, probably not true. Product name is assembly imported from type library, blah, 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 blah. Language is invariant language, unusual. And now you have a file name down here, an original file name that's embedded into the PE. Okay, I don't really know what that is. I'm going to have to do some more digging to find out what that is. And then you've got something like this. File description, to do. All right, how many developers know what that is there? Placeholder, right? All right. File version 1.0.01. Product name, to do, product name. All right, awesome. Let's see, we've got a copyright of 2011, the date modified 2012. It says it's French. It is not French. It's probably developed in France. And then we've got the original file name. So you're looking at this one going, well, what the hell is this? This looks funky. This looks really weird, right? Let me check that out.
How many people have gone down this route? How many people, we all have to do this if we're ops people looking at stuff. We have to determine whether this is good or not.
All right, so how about this one? I apologize for it being a little dark here, but here's another example. This file here, not a lot of information on it. If you run this file, it comes up with program name is signed exe title. Very descriptive. Verified publisher, so it's got a certificate on it, of Dell. That's actually a part of a Dell what is it, Dell's local backup utility. So this utility actually does some privilege escalations on box. In terms of analyzing this from a malware perspective, this thing looks really weird. So, they did a really bad job of naming this thing. Clearly, nobody freaking ran this in a QA mode to see how this thing looks to the consumer or folks like us that are trying to analyze a machine.
Anybody here from Dell? Take this back and please tell them to fix it. Oh, we're going to pick on another vendor here, so don't worry.
Yeah,
Not
we
just
got
Dell.
plenty of them.
How many people here would click on this and trust? Everybody in the room is going to click on this because we pretty much all do. That's the
I
reality.
did. I actually clicked on it multiple times just to make sure it executed. So how do you know if it's good? So what's some kind of common things beyond just the run another antivirus scan that we do? And again, this isn't very deep forensics, right? But this is kind of your starting off, right? So you run it against VirusTotal. You do some Google searches on it. You look at file advisors, sandboxes. You compare to other files on your other systems. And if needed, you can download and compare it. Download the same utility if you can find it and compare that version and see if it's the same. So let's step through those.
Okay, VirusTotals. This was a really interesting one because I've been, and Ian have been, but today, specifically today, a friend asked for us to help him describe this problem a couple slides from now to make sense. And I went back and forth. And his first response to this was, oh, this triggered a couple odd keylogger scenarios. It triggered with McAfee. It's a false positive because this file is actually signed. It's in Bit9's database. It's actually signed. Okay, it looks good. There's other, you guys have clicked on these things, get other data. But this is a well-known WinNTI, well-known to us, not well-known to all you, but a well-known piece of WinNTI. It is a launcher, okay? And so I had to actually go back and describe to him how this thing worked. Because his first thought, just like all of us normally do, just like we used to do, look at this and say, well, this one's now bad because of us. But look at this information. Hey, it's VT says it's okay. And Bit9's in the repository. We're going to move on. But the reality is this is a bad juju, really bad juju. It's a piece of it. And we'll talk more about what that means here in a second.
But most of the time you analyze, it looks like this.
Yeah. And of course, here's loadperf. Again, another piece of the WinNTI payload. But the interesting thing here is this is a real Windows file that's been modified. And we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah. The key takeaway from this one is when you're doing an analysis, when it says detection ratio 0, okay, the only thing you should be using VirusTotal for is to confirm that something is malware. If you get a bunch of hits, it's malware. If you get like 20, 40 hits, anything basically beyond generally around 3 to 5 hits. You say about 5 hits, you're good. But if you got 0 hits, don't trust it. It can still be malware. A lot of times, that's why we're saying 97% of the stuff that we've looked at that we know is malware doesn't get hit in here. 0 hits.
Now the cool thing about this particular one is the fact that this is a real Windows file. Okay, now a lot of people say, if I upload my malware and VirusTotal comes back and says, never seen it, then you've just told the malware writers that you have the malware because now they can check VirusTotal for the hash and see that someone checked it. We've been discovered, right? So there's a decision you have to make when you're researching this stuff to determine whether or not you're going to upload it to VirusTotal. When we do this, we've already determined that this stuff is bad. We're putting it up here so we can laugh and say, yep, they didn't know anything about this, right? So we're validating what we already know. And yeah, we're letting them know. It's a cat and mouse game with APT. We're letting them know, they know, we know, they know, we know they know, and all that stuff. It goes back and forth, back and forth. But the reality is, we've triggered them. We've let them know, we know.
You know?
You know? Google. So, okay, I find another file as a part of this payload, and I Google it. 3 hits. Okay, what in Google can you Google and only get 3 hits, 1 hit, 2 hits, 4 hits? Nothing, right? If you can't get something out of Google out of it, that's bad. And so here's an example, and if you look at all these, they actually have nothing to do with what we put in the Google search. Another indicator that something's amiss here. And then Ian did a good one. He just wanted to trigger one because we see this a lot when we do these.
Yeah. It's very common that if you're searching for a file, one of the first hits that'll come up is sites that say, oh yeah, we can help you identify and fix your problem and help you replace any bad DLLs that you have on your system. Just install this utility. It's
That's
awesome.
right.
And so I just put in some BS DLL name. I called it your.dll. And look what comes up. DLL files, how to install your DLL, MPP tools, free download. I mean, so you can't rely on Google for going and trying to tell you whether or not this stuff's good or bad.
It's all information you have to take into account. So File Advisor, here's the same file. If you noticed earlier, it was form.exe, but if you notice here, it's inkform.exe. This is probably, I'd love to get a copy of the real one, but this is probably its real name. So the malwareans have actually changed the name and the use of it. It is probably a valid executable, probably, or has the Microsoft certificate that it was signed with been stolen? We all know that happened with Stuxnet. So is it one of those cases? Or does Microsoft not know that it's bad yet and has not revoked the certificate? The funny thing here is, if you look down here, and we're not picking on the vendor. Like, this is really good in certain environments, right? So, but we're just trying to point out that our industry is looking at things wrong. We need to change. I mentioned that in Wendy's talk the other day. You know, you got to make bold statements. We got to think. We got to think outside the box. We got to change our behavior. It's been seen 3 times. Anybody notice the .cn at the bottom of this? 1, 1, and 1 makes up for 100% of what it's found in Bit9's repository. They're telling you that this is a good file. Okay. Anybody here, if you see 2 out of 3 hits from China, are you going to believe this is a good file from that screen right there? Victor Anna will. He's raising his hand back there. No one can see it. Right, so PC phone. This is actually a part of ActiveSync, okay? What version? Can't tell you that, don't know. Haven't looked that far. I just know that this is the launcher for some really bad juju. But the fact that this trust is here, that we rely on these tools, that these vendors sell these tools with this trust, you know, is a bad scenario. We have to take all the pieces of information and say, hey, wait a minute. What I just saw earlier is counter to this. What's going on here? Now we have the other files associated with it.
Now the other thing with this one, we don't have the screenshot on this one, but behind the scenes here, there's another screen that shows you the trust rating level. So it's out of 10. And in this, with Bit9, this particular product, you can move a little slider bar to say how much trust you're willing to provide for the software. And so you basically, it takes that into account. So you say, okay, anything that's like 7 or higher, you know, for example, it'll go ahead and automatically trust those things. This one here, anybody have a guess on what that rating was? How many people think it was 5 or higher? All right, Christian doesn't count because he already knows. All right, how about 8 or higher? All right, 2 hands, 3 hands. No, put your hand down, Victoria.
No, Victor, I was like, oh, they're sitting
It was
this up.
10. It was 10. Okay, you couldn't evade this if you were using this particular solution configured this particular way.
Now the debate is this malware? Maybe originally it was. You cannot see 2009, May 23rd, 2009. It's 2013. It has a trust of 10 out of 10. It's been seen 3 times, twice in China. How many people here trust this file? And I'm telling you, it is part of ActiveSync. How many people here trust this file? Should have been revoked, should have been removed. That's my opinion. That's his opinion. A couple other people's opinion, I'm sure. We told him this a 1.5 years ago. It's still in the repository. This is pulled up from this week. They don't like us talking about this, but again, we have to educate you. That's what we're here for. Sandboxes. So we also utilize sandboxes. The problem with sandboxes is if I have a static DLL, if I have that executable will do something. But I have a static DLL and I throw it in a sandbox, it doesn't do anything. It comes back with this nice little screen. Cannot load equals yes. You need to have an installer, something to deliver the DLL into memory for a sandbox to work. We've also received malware. The minute I put it on the VM to analyze it, 5 minutes later it's gone. So they're doing VM detection, right? So you have to look at this stuff and say, how am I going to sandbox this payload if I don't have the delivery mechanism? It's already in a box. I've looked at it. I don't have the executable. So again, here's the load perf showing that it's, again, no valid, 2 different sandboxes, no valid Win32 binary because it's just a DLL. But yet here I'm actually loading a phished scenario and there is a report. that we see,
Go
and
back.
that's the whopping
Yeah.
result.
So if you were to be looking at the screen here, you'd probably look at this and say, well, this doesn't look like malware, right? It looks okay. So to get a little bit deeper into the DLL aspect of why these sandboxes can't find these things, there's two ways. Well, there's more than two ways, but there's two basic ways that you can basically execute code from within a DLL. And one is you've got an entry point where as soon as the DLL is loaded up, it'll go ahead and execute that code within that section. The other is you're basically tapping into one of the methods that's within the DLL, one of the imports. And when you're doing it in that method, it doesn't know, the sandbox doesn't know how to call that DLL. It doesn't know which method to use or which parameters to use. You've got really good stuff where you can have a method that normally takes, let's say, a Windows DLL. And there's a method that normally takes a parameter that is always a positive value. And you've baked this malware so that you're going to pass it, you're going to passing in a negative value. And when it sees that negative value, it's going to take a different action. Well, how's a sandbox going to have any idea of that logic, that it needs to pass it this particular thing to get it to execute that way? It's too easy to get past these sandboxes.
And by the way, this is another valid PE-injected modified Windows DLL. So 2 of them in here. And that's the wonderful results that you get with some of these sandboxes. Some sandboxes are better than others. Clearly, this one wasn't very good in its results. Doesn't tell you a whole lot. And you can go to the different screens and information, but this is kind of what we have. It's the tools we use.
So how do you know if it's good comparing to other systems? How do you know the other systems are good if you're comparing it? Is your infection just on one machine? Is it on 2 machines? Is it on 3 machines? We've seen compromises across hundreds of machines.
Quite often, IR vendors, we had a conversation with one at a con here recently, said, yeah, I was brought in to look at one box. We know that server's compromised, we want you to look at it. And they found it and said, okay, have you checked all these others? No, we're pretty sure it doesn't have it. Well, you mind if we check it? It won't take very long, we'll load our agent, blah, blah, blah. Okay, over 100 infections, same malware, right?
Yeah. So if you didn't build a protected repository in advance, if you don't have a good set of, from a very simple perspective, a good set of hashes to compare against, of good things, then once you're in this mode of incident response, you can't just suddenly go, okay, let me make something. You don't have enough time. And so if you don't have that, you're probably replacing some reliance on certificates. That is, you're going to probably weed out those files that are digitally signed, that have Authenticode certificates on them, so that you can focus on the ones that don't. So,
HP, you want me to do that? I can
Go ahead.
too. So I used to work for HP. I love to hate them now that I don't work for them. We picked on Dell earlier. Now I'm going to pick on HP. I'm going to hijack this slide. So these are typical HP files. If you've ever had to go through, whenever I come up with my short list to focus in on, these damn things are always in there. He's not as bad. Yeah, they're always that damn there. Goddamn HP, why don't you fix this? And I know people, and I've told them, and they're like, okay. So if you look at one of the pieces of information, as Ian just described, certificate-wise, verified unsigned. Now, I'm sorry, but these are HP management DLLs. What in the hell are they doing not signing their management DLLs? That's one. The other is the name of the file, HPC something, something, something. The internal names are PML driver.dll. Why is the file name different than the internal name? Warning, Robertson. Again, to us, it's one of those things we look at, so it's like, there's not 1, there's not 2, there's not 3, there's 4. Trust me, there's a whole lot of these. And the bottom one, clearly, SNMP. Why in the hell would you do that for SNMP drivers? I mean, it's really stupid, right? This is the behavior we hope all of you take back to your shops and say, you guys have to quit doing this. Start looking at this. This is a 5-minute job that you can determine if your guys are writing stuff that they can fix this. So we can ignore it easier and move on, and all you can ignore it and move on.
And of course, the idea that weeding out the ones that have certificates because they're probably good is pretty bad. We've found just in the stuff that we've worked on, Intel, Microsoft, Lenovo, all these different certificates. There's tons of different certificates. This is just a short list. But big name companies, files that they are stealing their certificates, and then they are making injected DLLs, or they are making their own, crafting their own executables and appearing as those products. So if you see something like that, very difficult to determine just right away by looking at the certificate whether or not it's good or bad. And another problem is Microsoft's caching of certificates, the CRLs, is awful. It's really freaking bad. Microsoft can cache certificates for months. And I have had on more than one occasion where we've had something that we have caught that had looked like it had a valid certificate on it, checked it against the built-in Microsoft API calls, and we go and we pull the CRLs manually and we look at it, and it's been revoked. It had been revoked for months. There is no way, and this is actually a built-in Windows thing. The Windows API will refuse to do a CRL check on demand. If it has never checked their certificate, it will go do one. But if it has checked a certificate and it stores, if you look at the certificate details, if you drill down far enough on a certificate, it'll tell you how long it's cached for. There's no way within the operating system, this is documented, for you to force it to do a CRL check. So once it's cached, if that changes anytime soon, you're screwed. So if you're doing in your code any kind of certificate checking, please do not use the built-in Windows API. And keep that in mind when you're doing your certificate checks. Yeah?
Can you purge the cache?
No. No, I literally, there's actually there's an MSDN document I can point you to that spells it out in no uncertain terms that this is a built-in operating system function and it cannot be overridden. There's no way, and I've tried, there's no way. You actually have to write your own CRL and OCSCP parser.
Or you can wait months and months and months.
Yeah.
How long does the cache, or when does the cache expire?
Well, basically, it will. It's got some different steps of it goes through to make that determination. One of the things it does is it'll go and it'll check when it checks the website. The website can present it with, here's how long you can cache it for. Yeah.
So it depends. Now,
So it tends to be that, but it doesn't have to be. Yeah.
Now, based on the info, these are Chinese. These are Americans. Would you trust these or those, or none, or all, with what you now know? See the challenge here? Certificates. So more on certificates. So again, we'll talk more about the details of SigCheck. We haven't used it before, but this is part of the 10-cent malware we got, or the certificate that was least used, reused, stolen, signed. Again, it shows that it's signed, shows that Send signed it. It's got all the data, cut it off so we don't have to, run it down. And then again, here's the product ID, QQ, question, probably has some Unicode in there. First thought is, yeah, this is probably okay. We know that's bad. But to you, it's probably okay. So that's the challenge here that we have with this stuff. Did they steal the certificate? Did they reuse the certificate? Did they do a PE modification that kept the certificate intact? These are all questions that we have to evaluate when we're doing this.
Yeah, you can take a certificate out of one file. just digital certificate's just sitting within the PE file. You can take that and you can move it into another PE file, okay? Which is fine. Now, unless your function that's doing the certificate checks the the hash, there's a signature that gets built based upon portions of that PE file, and there's a digital signature that's made based upon that signature, all right, that validates. Unless your code is checking that, then you won't know that, yes, basically what Windows does is it'll check the certificate, it'll pull the certificate out and verify the certificate, but it won't verify that the certificate is signed for that particular file. So watch out.
And
It's awesomeness.
Yeah, and by the way, the last one, the form.exe that you saw up there, a fish. This is also a fish example. You see a pattern here? The fishes have valid certificates in them to get by products, maybe? Try to make you think that it's okay? So here's another one. Again, form.exe, so now you can see what it actually is. Now, fortunately, since we've had this a while, now we get this required certificate is not within its validity period when verifying against the revocation list, blah, blah, blah. But same thing, Microsoft Corporation, inkform.exe, but yet it's been delivered as form.exe. Right there, I can tell you, well, fishy. Shouldn't be changing names. 90% of what you look at, the names don't change. But here you go. It's signed. It just can't be updated because we know why. Ian explained it. So again, certificates, the good and the bad. So on the left, we have a real Windows System 32 loadperf.dll. Here's the valid, signed. Again, can't validate it. It's been there a while. But here's all the signed stuff, and here's the name of the file. It's load controller, DLL from the MUI. And then here is the same file that in the course of infecting the machine, they copy off, they PE infect, and look what happened to it. A, the hashes change, BF1, FC1. The name and everything else, all the metadata is the same, but you now have an unsigned file. But for the most part, these are exactly the same files. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you look inside the actual PE header, here are the 4 sections, but the PE infected now have 6. This is the modified version of that file, the ugly.
Yeah. So what they're doing in this example is they're just, once they're getting on box, they're not actually dropping a particular updated DLL. They're getting on box, they're seeing what DLL you have, they know which one they want to target, and they're just injecting code. They're taking that, making a copy, injecting code into that DLL. They're rewriting the PE section headers. They're pointing into different locations. They'll put some stuff at the end of the file, and they'll call that as either part of the entry point or whatever they want to do in their code. So everything about the file otherwise looks very much the same.
Now, if they stole a certificate and then they re-signed this file, boom. Product like Bit9, maybe even you in reviewing it, would see a valid certificate and move on. Totally bad. So download and compare. You can download and compare files, right? I can go out to the net, I can grab this thing. I did this with the Lenovo cam driver. It took a while. Anybody ever tried getting Lenovo drivers? Holy moly. And finding the exact same file that I had for the malware, that took a while. And then I finally downloaded it, and then I realized, yes, it's modified. But it's signed. So here's an example of a signed file that was modified. Or did the vendor themselves that Lenovo got it from do this and distribute it? Anybody heard about the Lenovo cam driver possibly having a backdoor? This is what I'm talking about. This is probably an example of that. Yes?
No, when you say signed, do you mean signed with the valid hash for the contents?
Yeah, signed by Lenovo. It may not have been revoked yet because, again, I have not checked it from that perspective.
Okay.
But first pass, it was a signed valid file, and it kind of looks okay. And again, can you download on versions? Anybody tried to go and get like previous versions of Adobe or WinZip or 7-Zip or pick a tool, QQ Browser, QQ Chat, pick a tool, right? Can you go find all these versions so that you can actually do a compare? Because they're using older stuff. It's really hard, right? It's just not necessarily an option. Maybe in the software there's a license and hardware restriction, dongles, what have you. And do you really have time to do this during investigation? No, Sniper Forensics, we want to find it, we want to contain it, we want to eradicate it, and move the heck on. If we want to do long-term, deep, long, expensive, time-consuming forensics, take the drive out, do it later. But we're looking to find, eradicate. I don't have time for that. I got to move on.
So how can you help? What are the actionable things? So if from a development perspective, we could get software that looks less like malware, like good software that looks less like malware, that would help us out a lot. So that means marking up your metadata in a consistent fashion. So those things where we showed you the to-do, right? The version numbers that probably are, like 1.0.0.0, the defaults, all of that stuff. Having the internal file name be the same as the external file name. All of those things to keep it clean and to make sure that that's repeated over and over. And so you kind of build that pattern and make it more difficult for somebody who's writing malware, who's maybe going to misspell something or maybe going to have something a little bit different. They're going to stand out a little bit more if this good stuff is consistently tagged from a metadata standpoint. Was there a question? No? Okay. Code sign all of the PEs. So all your executables, all of your DLLs, OCX files, you can sign your ActiveX controls. All of those things should be signed. And you should make sure you're relying upon Authenticode, built-in certificates in the file itself. Don't use the Windows cat root, Windows security catalog, because we've seen some compromises of that. Make sure you timestamp it against the CAs. So that's a for many of the products that are out there, it's an optional thing. Most of the time, the products don't do it. So make sure that you are timestamping against your CA so it puts into the code and signs into the code the time that that certificate was written. Use a different signing key, use a different signing certificate for each product and change it out every year, at least, or maybe every major product release. You should look at this from the perspective of hopefully not, but your certificate may get compromised. Your signing certificate may get compromised, your private key. If that happens, you're going to need to revoke your certificate. You want to have the least impact across your product line as you can. You don't want to have your customers saying all of your certificates on all of your products are revoked. You want to limit that down. So these keys, these private keys aren't all that expensive, not from a large company perspective. So get one of those each for each of your products. And tell the internet what is good-ish by publishing your hashes, publishing the files that are contained within all of your product set. Right? When we did the Google, right, we're Googling for something, but there's no source of truth. There's no source of truth saying this is something that's good. Now, if we had the metadata, and we could say this is what this file is, we know where to go look. This is from Dell, or this is from Intel, or this is from your company. When we could go to maybe your website, we could maybe do a Google search, and we could very quickly match these things up to say, yes, it says it's this product. It says it's this hash. We have a match. We have a total match on this stuff. So therefore, we know it's good. Okay? But without putting that information out there, all we're going to get is what some other third party decided to publish out there, like download this free tool to infect your computer. And analyze your stuff to see if it looks like malware. Go through these same steps like we do, these very quick steps to go through it and see, how does it come up? Does it look like malware? If it looks like malware, try to design it so that it doesn't. So it doesn't hit those flags, so that you're not triggering, so that you're not getting tagged by VirusTotal as saying 1 out of 40, or 2 out of 40, or 3 out of 40, with these semantic, suspicious insight type of triggers. So we can go into some detail on that one on the next slide here. You want to take this one?
So again, buy certs from trusted third parties. We had one here in Turkey, right? Yeah, you don't want to buy stuff from Turkey because it's cheaper. Don't be a Turkey. Buy from Turkey. And again, don't use foreign certs of a U.S. company. NSA will love you for that, by the way. Yep. But hey, there's an advantage, right? We're an American company. If you have to sign something with a foreign cert for a foreign nation, we understand Russia's going to be monitoring the Olympics. They've already told everybody. They're not even trying to hide it. And so maybe that stuff would have to be written inside of the Russian certificate. We understand. But from an IR perspective, your own people's IR, our, anybody's IR, that's a good thing. It's easier for us to deal with. We can look up their certificate. We can see if it's revoked, etc. Do not use Packers and other elite hackers' tools for your own stuff. Yeah, but it's cheaper and free and all that. No, because people like Zipton will pick, he's smiling, so I know he's looking for this. People like Zipton will pick up on that and say, there's something fishy about this file. So you don't want to do that. You want to use reputable stuff. And again, funky naming conventions, stop it, HP, Dell, and pick a few other companies. But I mean, it's kind of a bummer to have that many files that are clean and that we have to build a list of bad looking stuff that's actually good. So please name the internal and the external the same. Avoid unnecessary privilege escalations. And again, don't do things like install the app data and program data to try to skirt UAC. UAC should come up. There's a reason for it. When we find stuff that's written to there, we definitely look at it more closely. And then we're going to make a call to you, and we're going to ask you for this information, and you're going to say, I don't keep that info. We actually, we know somebody at Adobe, so I reached out and asked them, hey, can we get a list of your hashes for CS products? Because, we use a lot of them. By company policy, we do not provide hashes to anyone. So let me get this straight. You've got like frack loads of files, and you won't tell us what's good? Methinks they've had a problem with that.
Mm-hmm. And who has compromised certificates?
Yeah. Gee, I don't know. There's Adobe on the screen, just saying. So again, has access to all of your favorite code base, right? So protect your build environment. Too often we see build environments that are on the same network as everybody else who's administrators and such. If they bought one of your boxes, hello Bit9, hello, or say hello Adobe, they're going to get into the repositories. Bad design, you shouldn't do this. This is the keys to your castle, your code, your good stuff. Probably has all your certificate and private keys there too, so if they get in there, boom, done. In Bit9's case, at least the VM was powered down for what, 6 months before it got powered up, and then all the data went out. But again, if you lose your code, nobody will ever know because you're not managing this in the right method. You're not doing what we're saying here. Because if you did, you could very quickly revoke that Inkform cert, patch, and update, and now this stuff would flag in Bit9 and AV something fierce. And again, if you lose your certs, we'll know because it'll become more common to report them. And again, if you didn't take this action or revoke, we'll assume you didn't know you were compromised, and of course things get worse. Just ask these 3 vendors.
Yep. So from those who are concerned about security from I don't want the public to know and pay a lot of money for breach, you know, I see not a lot of effort being put on securing a build environment because you say, well, okay, it's the code and the code's everywhere, right? The code's on developer machines, the code's all over the place. So, you know, it might as easily get popped over here as it does on this build machine. But, which is maybe true if you don't protect that environment well. But if they steal your certificate, right, then that's going to be known. If somebody steals your code, they may not go and put it out on Pastebin or some site and share it with everybody. They may be interested in it for themselves, right? They're going to do it for themselves and not share that out. So it may not become public knowledge that your code has been stolen. But if they take your certificate, what are they taking it for? They're taking it to use it. They will be sending it out to somebody. It will show up at some point on someone's, folks like us are going to see that at some point and go, you were compromised. And then we'll start asking questions, right? As soon as that is known, then that's going to trigger, that third party reporting you've been compromised, what's going on, and then the breach engine, the response engine kicks in, and the dollars start, having an impact, right, on your organization, right? Mandiant
will love you though.
So even if you don't care about your code, at least protect your build environment because your build environment is going to have your private key on it. So what can you do to protect it? Keep those private keys offline if you can. Limit your code access. Limit anything that you can do to help protect that production environment. Maybe you have a separate production versus internal test build system, right? Maybe you say, okay, well, we can't have all this stuff offline. We got to have this, online all the time, right? We're doing compiles, we're doing continuous integration. Okay, awesome. But how often are you pushing code out to customers? How often do you actually say, this is the final code? We're going to go ahead and go live with this one. Bring up that secure environment. Do what you need. There's your private key. Generate your certs. Check everything. Make sure everything's good. And then you go.
Yeah, nobody would ever ship infected code or something with bad juju on it knowingly, right? Nobody would ever do that because they don't have a good code repository. HP, we both worked somewhere that did that. HP's done it with printer drivers. It happens because they're not protecting that compiled payload. They're not taking that copy offline. Yeah, keep it, test live, blah, 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 but why not an offline copy? Place I worked, you couldn't get into that environment if you tried. He literally went there, he burned a CD, he walked it over, he analyzed the heck out of it, made sure it was exactly what it was, and then he built the software from that in an environment which got boxed and shipped or downloaded. Very controlled. Not a lot of people do that. So with that, thank you. Questions, comments? Let's brainstorm. Not too hard, huh? This is something you could actually do. Questions?
A question about the hash to publish. Is industry practice, has it moved to SHA-1 now? Or is MD5 still the norm?
Yeah, I would just go straight with SHA-1.
Okay.
And then if you want, you can do SHA-256, SHA-512, whatever. But I think right now what I'm seeing across the board is it's still pretty much SHA-1. And I think it's going to remain SHA-1 for a while. But there's no reason to not just go ahead and include the other ones. MD5, nobody's using that much anymore.
Is it helpful also to publish it for each of the individual files inside?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's got to be for every individual I would do every file within the package, just everything, and list it all out, you know, like a little directory tree type format or whatever. But just, you know, put them all right on there. If it's just, you know, we'll see folks that just publish the installer, but that doesn't help at all. You know, the installer gets installed and then it's probably deleted off the system, or it's sitting in some, you know, uninstalled directory.
And keep it, if someone calls, emails you, and you can just provide it to them. At least we know we reached out to you, and you gave us what we now can trust. It's a good idea. Questions, comments? Come on, it's the end of the day. Somebody's got something good. That's it? You just want to go get the prizes. That's all you're doing. You're just hanging out, waiting for the prizes. Yes, in the back.
You guys made the wall of shame site yet? Say like, here's all the people who have had their shirt compromised.
Well,
Waiting.
that's,
You know, green light, red light, have they revoked their shirt yet?
no. I mean, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to give demonstrations of, you know, these are things that we encounter that we have to work through, and that you have to, you know, take. There's going to be problems in every product, right? There's going to be problems with every solution. That's just the way it is. But knowing what they are and being able to dance around them and understand, here's where it's good, here's where it's bad. Like the VirusTotal example, you know, if it's above 5, now you know. If it's above 5, it's bad, definitely bad. Don't assume that 0 is good.
Sure, but are you letting those vendors know that you've discovered what appears to be a piece of malware? Legitimate
Yes, we work directly with all of those vendors.
Okay.
Yes.
Like the ones we can actually get a hold of that isn't in a foreign country that we know we really don't want to talk to.
Yep.
For various reasons. We're both convinced we can't go to China, for example.
Yeah.
Would not probably be a
Yeah.
One more. Since there was a bit of a checklist that you went through at the end, how scriptable is that?
How scriptable is it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing, when we're building thousands and thousands of files into meta installers and so forth, unless it's scriptable, yeah, it's really hard for us to roll it out.
All right, read this next screen. November 15th, sponsored by your local ISSA chapter. Ian and I will be doing a hands-on training all day. It'll kind of be theoretically split into 2 pieces, the entry-level kind of thing, and then we'll do deeper diving and we'll talk about some of the stuff. And you'll see some of the tools that I had executed, some of the command lines you saw, and we'll talk about some of those. And so that you potentially could do this. For example, in the example that we had at where I used to work at Pervasive, now Actian, I could go to the repository if I wanted to, do a SHA-1 deep, MySAR, blah, 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 and get a whole list of everything if I ever needed it. If there was ever an incident where we had one client call me while I was there that said, hey, you know, I need to validate something. And I called the right guy because he's right outside my door. And he looked it up for me, and he has all the information. So we'll teach some of those tricks in this session in November 15th. So Lisa, you in here somewhere? There you go. When is it? She's been bugging me like crazy. But ISSA is supporting this. SourceFire and Critical Start will be, thank you Travis, thank you Kelly for providing lunch. And sign up. It's a registration fee, but it's for no show. You get refunded when you come.